Garten of Banban has a very unique cast of characters, and some are most likely going to be better than others. How do I think each of the characters compare to each other? What characters do I think are better than others and have better writing? One day I'm going to be ranking the characters and talking about how well each character is written. So, let's talk. First off, when I'm ranking these, I'm ranking them based on their characterization and how well written they are. A character could have a cool concept, but they feels like they don't fully explore it or do much with it when they probably should. That will be docked. A character could have plenty of appearances, but if they don't do much, they can be lower ranked. But a character could also have a very small role, but if it fits that role, and I feel that it does not need too much more for that, it can be ranked high. In addition, a character might not have an important role yet, but that is because they are building up to it in the future. At that point, I'm ranking it based upon how far we are in the narrative so far. I'm going in order based upon when the characters first make their appearance. So, like and subscribe. Opila, I would place C tier. Opila is an interesting character. She is the first of many characters without a voice. Her main behavior thing is that she has a motherly instinct, she wants to protect her chicks, and she takes care of them. She's also very much bird-like, mostly in 1, where we actually get to see like an actual predator behavior. In terms of writing, she makes lots of appearances, but doesn't do anything. There could have been a long time ago, once we got access to Little Beak, where Opila Bird could have formed a connection or understanding to the parents, and that be a plot point. It would have been a nice little interesting plot point that they could have done really well to give Opila Bird a bit more something in terms of narrative and character growth, with how little you can do with such a non-speaking character. So, she's in C tier. Next up is Jumbo Josh in D tier. And I know. Look, he's good at being dumb brute character, but he's kind of boring beyond that. He doesn't do much, narratively doesn't have anything interesting going on, and several times, when it seems like they're going to do something unique or cool with him, he's just been sidelined. I think he's had great moments, but especially with stuff like the Scepter. Like, he's been sidelined way too much for his appearances and his personality is shining through. We also don't get to see a lot of that gorilla behavioral issues being a major part. He's just kind of like generic, so he kind of just goes in D tier. Next up, we have Nabnab, who is in A tier. Nabnab is the sad loner. He's the depressed variation for Banban, which he has a complicated relationship with. They were once friends, then they were kind of like enemies. Banban tried to help Nabnab, but Nabnab couldn't get that help, and so they got mad, but they also forgive each other. It's a nice little arc, and it is explored well enough. He's also empathetic, as shown in the Garten of Banban 4 dream sequence, when he is willing to give his broccoli over to the parent. Because of how accurate the characters are to their normal selves in the dream sequences, I think this can probably apply to Nabnab. But he also hasn't been doing much. Once again, another character sidelined in Garten of Banban 8 and made no appearance in 7 besides the dream sequence. Banban, the main man himself. A tier. Banban, as a character, there's a lot of major issues, which makes sense since he is one of the most influential characters. He has identity issues as an adult, he believes he is his genome donor, and he gets really aggressive when someone says he isn't. He also has issues with his hellish form that he wants to control, and it makes him a monster, which hurts him inside because he is very much a people person and a kind character. He does stuff to help others. Nabnaleena was not just a thing to trap Nabnab, as the notes say. For Banban, it was to give Nabnab a friend so he could calm down. He gives Mr. Kabob Man, or tries to Zolphius, and he apologizes for a lot of mistakes or harm done to others. At the end of 2, he apologizes to the parent for knocking them over the head earlier, and he does the same thing with Nabnab in 6 for their fight they got into in 4. And when he was a juvenile, he's a bit more self-absorbed, he has a bit more of an ego issue, but he's also still a nice guy. He's friendly, he tries to help out Flumbo up until he learns what Flumbo is, and immediately after, Syringeon barges in. His first instinct is to check on Banbaleena to make sure that she's okay and not too terrified. He's thinking about others in that moment. A person grows up, and a juvenile is not the same person their adult version is, and for Banban, that was a bit of, he had ego issues, but he kind of grew out of that. Instead, he grew into other issues. The main issue I have with Banban is he's way too manipulated in 8. He believes and follows along Syringeon blindly and never once argues for himself on screen. There's hints at doubt before, but his animations don't show it, and he does not seem to care or react when Banbaleena's dropped into pit. I have a lot with this, and I want to do a video talking about my issues with the 8's ending. One of the issues is Banban's characterization in Garten of Banban 8, which really doesn't feel like the characterization we have gotten for the character previously. Next up is Captain Fiddles' crew. The first of the many characters that were not on this list when I got it, mostly because a lot of them are from 8. Has not updated this. So Captain Fiddles' crew is F tier. They're an interesting idea. A group of characters that are improvements upon one another that were all aiming to make characters that mimic toddler behavior, at least good behavior, but they're all dead, except one who doesn't really show too much of that toddler behavior and is just generically there. They're so boring, I could barely tell that Captain Fiddles wasn't in the corpses in 2, because he isn't. He's still out there and he's still alive. He's not amongst the corpses. I thought he was for a long time, and that's just kind of because I don't pay too much attention to it, and there's not that much interest in them, and there's not much being done with them, despite the interesting idea. Next up, we have Zolphius, who's going at the top of C tier. He has good lore. If you read a series of notes between Dr. Adam Uthman and Miss Weverly Mason, Zolphius is the character intended to be their artificial child they would have taken with them when they left the facility. But besides that, he's very mysterious. We don't know what he is, if he's lonely, if he's helping us. He doesn't do anything interesting. In 8, we went into his stomach, but there's still a bit more, and I wish we got a bit more interaction. The only real unique interactions we've had is the secret message in 3 and ending up in his stomach in 8. Next up, we have Banbaleena, who's going B tier. B for Banbaleena. Look at this lady. She's stupid. That's basically her entire personality. She's a stupid educational teacher character that fails at being a teacher. She has trouble with the mix between stupid and scary in Garten of Banban 2. There's a lot of lines where it's just like, super trying to be scary for some reason, but that fall flat. Because on the other half of it, she's saying dumb stuff and being humorous, and a lot of that ties into jokes, and those don't mix well together. And she shares a bit of the identity issue Banban is, but it's basically never explored. And she has had no growth in the entire story. No real development. She, over the course of the series, has been consistently a conduit. 2 was like her biggest outing. In 3, she acts as mostly just an explanation for the Jumbo Josh minigame. 4, world building. 6, she just shows up at the end for the Notified Army. Which she's part of in 7, which is kind of minor. And then in 0, she acts as a conduit for some conflict with Banban and Flumbo. And in 8, she acts as the thing that is used to get the group to the ending. She doesn't really play major roles, she's just there and plays specific minor roles. And she doesn't need big roles, she doesn't need major growth, but it makes for a very mediocre character to the point where she is in B tier. Opila chicks are top of D tier. They're an interesting concept, and they add more lore and are very much just conduit characters for Opila Bird. But they barely show up, they've barely been featured, and they barely do anything. Littlebeak being the only interesting one, but she has been so heavily sidelined after being given a big role in Garten of Banban 4 and 6, she just disappeared and has never been seen since. So I've been wanting Littlebeak to reappear for so long. It's not F tier because Littlebeak just boosts him up that much, but there isn't too much there. Next up is Seline, who's going in the top of C tier. So far, given the fact that she has upcoming appearances, and there will be role for her in the future, she isn't poorly written because we can see a clear path for her. She has the mysterious disappearance powers that are mentioned in 1 notes, and the weird vision mentioned in 0 gives her a whole new set of powers. She's most likely going to appear in either Last Ticket to the Abyss or a 10, and have important roles there. Once again, it's hard to say because her part, where she's going to play a really significant part, has not happened yet, where other characters have had their significant parts and then just get utterly sidelined. Stinger Flynn is our first S tier. He has such good dialogue, is well set up, 2 foreshadows him, 3 gives him that moment, and that speech, I love it. He has clear motivations, but you also learn more about him over time. The first conversation has gone more depth because we have learned that some of the way he says things, some of the things he means aren't fully aligning. There's a bit of manipulation in there. He does not have any preference, he does not have friends, none of that, so a lot of his first dialogue has entirely new meaning. And his dreams have added a lot for world building and characterization. It's allowed to help form an interesting bond between him and Banban, and has added for Nabnab and even a bit for Captain Fiddles. Character-wise, he is very manipulative, pessimistic, and an introvert. He doesn't get well with others, which adds for some interesting characterizations. One of my favorite parts, though, is the fact that he does not take responsibility for the problems he caused. When anything changes, he says that it is the parents' fault, despite the fact that the parent wouldn't be here if Stinger Flynn had never taken the kids in the first place. The only complaint I have is I wish that he just did more in recent games, but I don't think that's too harmful for his character. And from such a great character to Nabnaleena. A good concept. F. Like, I mean, they're more interesting than Captain Phil's crew, because Nabnaleena actually gets screen time and gameplay and mechanics. She's an interesting concept and could be a great conduit for Nabnab's character. You know, Nabnab's lonely, needs companionship. Give Nabnab a girlfriend character that he connects with. But she barely appears, is relatively forgotten, and she only interacts with Nabnab once. Once! The character that she is a conduit for, she barely interacts and barely connects to. She doesn't do anything. The most interesting thing that has happened to her since her inception was having a super obsessive creepy doctor. Next up, we have Captain Fiddles, who I would place beneath Zolphius. Like these three, he's very mysterious, he's barely appeared, and has an important lore with him being the only presented case, but he hasn't done anything interesting. The brothers have said that he has a role in the future, and we will see that role, but we have not gotten there. I think the reason why he's just below Zolphius is because Zolphius just has more lore. Captain Fiddles has like 3 notes, and that's it. Next up, we have Mr. Kabob Man. Bottom of B. This silly gang character is a fun little guy who serves his purpose and also somehow keeps moving, and they pointed out that it's happening on his own and it has to mean something, but they also haven't really done anything with that tease. Like, they literally make a point of trying to highlight this. What? I mean, that's a big issue. But he fits well in the roles he's used for. Gameplay, gags, jokes, and it's not too upsetting that he hasn't gotten used to anything, but still wish he got a little bit more. Or at least an answer to why he seemingly moves on himself. Is there more than one Mr. Kabob Man? I need answers! Next up, you have Tamataki and Chamataki, bottom of tier. They're a basic but interesting concept. A 2-headed beast. But that concept doesn't really matter. There is implications that they have 2 different heads that can argue and disagree. They never do anything with that. Never get an expansion for that. And overall, they're just a very generic filler role enemy. Just give them something to do. They fit that role. We're done. Then we have Tarta Bird. Basically Opila, but with less screen time and a little bit more boring, since he doesn't do as much. He has all the same problems with Opila has, not much characterization, and just appears. At least he's not like Nabnaleena, who doesn't get any showtime with his partner character, but it doesn't really mean much. Especially because beyond the parenting thing, which is a characterization Opila has, he hasn't gotten much characterization. Then we have Sheriff Toadster, who's going in the top of B tier. He's really well characterized, and a very interesting and deep character. He's dedicated and honorable to his roles, but he has trust issues. He does not trust humans very well, and when his trust is broken, it's hard to get it back. This, paired with the fact that he's cunning and clever, could make him a very bad enemy if the player were to lose his trust, which they do. And then they don't, and then they do again, and then he barely appears. Yeah, we'll get to that. He has great character moments. He's trauma-ridden. He has some of the biggest amount of trauma out of any character in the series. Immediately turns on the parent on the first sign they might have betrayed him, and then kills formerly his best friend. These moments lead to a lot of characterization and to a fulfilling arc, if it wasn't for the fact that he's been horribly sidelined. He appears for a short bit in every game, gets a moment, does nothing for the game. Garten of Banban 8 being the worst culprit, he's teased to be a member of this reclamation team, but then never shows up for the rest of the game. If someone has to hunt down the main character, I feel like the guy who's known to hunt down criminals would have been the best bet to be one of the monsters to reappear multiple times. But he doesn't. There is so much that he could have done, and it could have really built that tension so that the moment when he gets that conclusion, it feels a whole lot more satisfying. But we don't get that. Next up, we have Queen Bouncelia, who, I would say, top of S tier. She is kind. She's willing to sacrifice her own luxuries like laughter and protection for others. She's sad because of her circumstance and a lot of her history, but forms that bond with the parent. A lot of her dialogue seems to suggest that connection and that she wants to have more people around in her life. But before she can even get that or anything to be done, she tragically gets killed off. She doesn't have character growth, she doesn't get a conclusion, but with an untimely end, it fits, and it's realistic for a character to be a character that wants something so badly, but then they die or something happens and they can never get that thing they want. And Queen Bouncelia fills this role very well. I don't think I would change much about her and her role in the story. Next up, we have Bittergiggle. Then she's going into the just above Singer Flynn. He's really well characterized and has a great story. In Garten of Banban 4, he's gone crazy from being alone. He's desperate, and he does not believe anything he's been told about the Queen laughing, releasing the naughty ones. He's willing to do anything because he wants to fulfill that hole in himself that he has. That hole from not being able to fulfill the thing he was made for. And that ultimately dooms everything. In Garten of Banban 6, he's had time to reflect after the ending, and he's regained his sanity. Kai Coker even has a less exaggerated performance to match this, which helps make it feel more sane.
Like a bug to a zapper. I guess you could say our day won't be set terrible for much longer.
He's really apologetic, and he's trying his best to make things right, but everyone pushes him away except Banban. It's also stated that Bittergiggle did not have a positive view of the parents during this time. All this leads to his moment of weakness, which leads him to joining Dadadoo. The scene that foreshadows it makes sense, and it's not like it immediately happens. He then thinks, and he has an entire section of game where he's alone and he has time to think. This moment feels in character and lines with his previous wants, his want to fill that hole, to have an audience, to tell those jokes. In Garten of Banban 7, he dies. This becomes a conduit for Sheriff Toadster's continued trauma. He realizes that he is horribly messed up and says his final apology. His final speech leans into his want to make people laugh and fulfill his very purpose. This tragic ending for his character closes his story bittersweetly, because like with Queen Bouncelia, not everyone gets a happy ending or gets what they want in the end. And sometimes, they make their own lives worse trying to get it. It's a tragic character, and it has been handled so well. The experimental Jesters are going into the bottom of A tier. Listen, they are well-written conduits for Bittergiggle's story. He created the experimental Jesters in an attempt to create the ultimate jokester. If he couldn't be it, then he would create it. And this was part of his ever-growing madness. Each of them have nice little funny dialogue that fits well. The only thing I could say could have been improved is at least like part of the story where one goes to tries to go to just as extreme measures to show that they were just as desperate as Bittergiggle's problems were also applied to them. It's implied, but they never do too much into the story, and having at least one do something would have been very interesting. Kittysaurus is going to the top of D tier. Kittysaurus is a generic enemy character, like Tamataki Chamataki, but she's a bit more interesting. Her cat leads to a much more calm side, and she has more connection with calm moments. She's able to sit down and relax, and so she's just gotten more moments because of this that are nicer. And she is also connected to Bittergiggle, and it acts as almost like a pet. So she's very interesting to that. I think the biggest moment of weakness is her getting sidelined in 7, where she just spends the entire game sitting in a cage. She doesn't even get gameplay. Next up we have the Nanny, who's going below Captain Fiddles. She is a potential conduit for Zolphius' growth, and is a mysterious character that could have a major purpose, but it's hard to tell. Once again, Zolphius hasn't much done interaction, she barely has done anything, so it's hard to tell if she has much interaction if we're gonna get that. She's done very well at being a mysterious character, but it is hard to say. The naughty ones are going above Tamataki and Chamataki. They're good at being creepy and as swarm enemies. They are filling over the area, and they make you feel wild and surrounded, and in 6 they are very cool. But they get overshadowed by Sir Dadadoo and his notified army, to their only interesting appearance being in 6. In 7, they're not there. They basically aren't even that much of a threat. Besides the sound effects at play, which are creepy, we don't get to see much of the mischievous, naughty, childlike behavior of these characters that is implied to exist. And then Sir Dadadoo, here we go, top of A tier. He's such a well-written, intimidating character. In both games, he acts as the antagonist. He holds a sense of intimidation once on screen. He's vengeful and angry and expressive while he talks to his former comrades. His conversation with Syringeon in the ending of 7 really shows how he feels. He's kind of generic and uninteresting in Garten of Banban 8. I can completely understand why he would team up with the parent. His motivation makes sense. So far, the parent's proven to be lucky, so if he's just getting imprisoned, might as well try and get the parent to go with it. Maybe even get the parent onto his side. But past that, nothing interesting happens. Hopefully he has something more interesting happen with him in Last Ticket to the Abyss. And finally, probably one of the biggest downsides to this guy that keeps him from being an S tier, his name is stupid. Sir Dadadoo? Dadadoo? Oh my gosh. Ugh. Next up we have the Givanium Infants, which are going to the bottom of D tier. They give the child his vibes, but it doesn't connect well to the citizens. They're meant to foreshadow it. They don't show any anti-human policies, which would have been good for showing for Syringeon and its kind of anti-human sentiment. They also don't get any voice lines compared to other characters, so they're just kind of there. They exist, but they don't do anything. Next up we have the Givanium Citizens, which are going at the top of A tier. Top of A tier. Oh my gosh, they are great for world building and conduits for Syringeon's role. And we can really see Syringeon's influence on them with their anti-human beliefs, for the most part in the ones that live in Syringeon, and some get help from the parent, which shows that some are still considering of thinking for themselves, but they're in the minority. And they express distaste for Syringeon's current state, which boasts the depressing tone of the location. The only issue I have with this is they could have had like a proper rebellion group, or show signs of maybe some that want to get rid of Syringeon. So far, besides maybe some of the people in the stomach, there isn't really much for that. They're dumb in a good way for comedy, and their existence builds heavily onto Syringeon's surgical process and allows him to have that dictator role for his characterization. And then we have Syringeon, who's going to the top of A tier. Really well characterized. He is an egomaniac. He has statues of himself and sees him superior to everything else. Especially thinks humans are inferior to Givanium-based bodies, which is a good center for his belief and for the belief of those he creates. His dictator trait gives that evil side and makes him very interesting in world building. He is extremely manipulative with Banban, with the people he dictates and governs, and even to the parent. A lot of the things he say don't hold as much value because he is known to manipulate. And he has great connections to all areas of lore that feel natural and make sense for his prowess, with the surgical and mechanical side. He created the naughty ones. He created the scepter, or at least he created the powers of the scepter. He worked with the facility because of these abilities, but he was also part of the rebellion that turned against them because he saw the humans as inferior, and he created Banban's hellish form, which makes sense because he is known to conduct experiments. And he would have been a great final antagonist. His skill set has the connection to almost every character in the series, and he is super influential, and his evil actions have basically no justifications. But he wasn't, for some reason. He just dies at the end of 8? Okay. And the game teased that he had some big plan. Never got an explanation or answer for this, which does undermine him a bit and prevents him from being A tier. Next up, we have the Givanium Baby, which I would say, below Nanny. He really fits the role of the scary creature, but he has no real lore or explanation given. Maybe he's an experiment from Syringeon, which I assume is the answer, but we don't get that answer. And he has no appearance besides just one moment in 7. He could have been a member of the reclamation team, or he could have been seen in a tube in Syringeon's tower. Just something to give this character something more to do, because he's actually a very intimidating monster. Next up, we have the Givanium Blobs. They're basically just more interesting version of Givanium Infants. They don't live in Syringeon, and they don't hold the same beliefs about Syringeon, so they don't have his beliefs. They don't do really anything interesting for world building. They're implied to be the juvenile versions of the Citizens. They just exist. They're just YouTuber cameo roles, and ones that aren't really that interesting. Then we have Truffletoot, who's going below Captain Fiddles. He is a very good juvenile character. Nice role, but he doesn't have the kid feeling compared to Captain Fiddles, at least with Captain Fiddles doing stuff like messing around. Truffletoot has some nice expanded lore through notes and stuff in Garten of Banban 8, with his dangerously bright glow and toxic spores. And once again, like a lot of these other characters in C tier, will have presumably a bigger role later on, with them being a member of the reclamation team. But for now, not too much. Ramamba, above Givanium Baby. It's basically just the Givanium Baby, but a bit more impactful because it's so weird looking and has a lot more impact in the story. There's little lore and might reappear. I honestly would have been fine with it being a one-off monster, given the fact that they needed a monster that could act as the thing that targets Flumbo and tries to get Flumbo killed, that they could kill off, if that is what they needed. But it's not, because they basically stated that Ramamba's alive, so I don't know why Ramamba is here. I just have questions. But, talking about the victim of the goat snake, Flumbo, who's going in the top of A tier. He has a very interesting childlike personality that connects with the cluelessness in his art. That's handled very well. He starts the story clueless, but then becomes aware that something strange is happening, but he still has questions. And then he gets his answers, and he has to process it, and he has other questions. And eventually he figures out the full story and who he was supposed to replace, and it dawns on him what happened. He's not sure what to think and what to feel, but he faces the people who took his life and stands strong, not falling for anything. Which almost parallels the beginning of the story, where he was just mindlessly following along what these two were doing. The only major issue is, how does he know about his hellish form? And how does he translate the Elder's flawed explanation into what exactly happened? Because what the Elder tells him is not the actual story, but he also then completely goes and says, oh yeah, I know exactly what happened. What he says is exactly the truth. So that is a big plot hole. Clawrenzo, who is going above Tamataki Chamataki. Once again, another generic enemy character. Doesn't do anything too interesting. The only interesting part of the personality is the parenting aspect, but that's already taken by Opila and Tarta, so he doesn't stand out that overall and just feels generic. I honestly believe that he could have had his part in 8 replaced with Tamataki and Chamataki and just had them die at the end of it, and it would not change much. Makeshift Doctor. Top B. He's such a weird character, but his appearance is so memorable. His Nabnaleena obsession and that scene make him stand out. There is not really too much of a flaw with his writing. That obsession that is weird and it is strange, and he fits for that kind of bizarre encounter for such a one-off character. He fits very well, and I'm glad that he exists. If not for the moment, so I can have the shark moment where this thing dies. Yeah, just put him there, below Givanium Blobs. At least the Givanium Blobs have funny lines, but he's more interesting than the infants because, or I guess she, it's just she, but she's more interesting because she actually has the part where she dies. So she's more interesting than the infants, but then the blobs are more interesting because they have funny lines. The Givanium Elder, I would say, just as well written of a one-off character as the Makeshift Doctor, but with one major flaw. He's a helpful character. He works as the guide for the Zolphius stomach part of the thing, basically guiding where the story and the elements go, and he's kind, respectful, adds another layer to the dynamic of the citizens, showing that there are good ones out there, which also makes me wish there was a proper rebellion. He has the small issue of him having his explanation to Flumbo not being the correct or true story, which bugs me a lot. So he would have been above Makeshift Doctor, but that thing just, yeah, it hurt him. Varzah! Our human-hating, jealous hyena wielding a torch character that commits arson. He is so interesting. His anti-human and jealous behavior makes him a very interesting build-off points. Hasn't done much, but still have an interesting role. The one thing I'm worried about is that we're getting closer. There isn't much room to do much interesting with a brand new character being introduced. So I'm worried that he might not have as much impact as characters' stories that have been here for a while. But so far, he has made such a major impact. Miss Mimicker? Top of F. Look, I love her introduction. The way she is used is insulting to me. So many interesting things could have been done with a character that can mimic the voices of other characters. Especially when that character's purpose is to recapture the parent. If you're being hunted down and someone's trying to capture you that can mimic the voices of others, that's such an interesting concept. That could be used in so many different ways. But she gets killed off before anything had happened. Her introduction scene is good, but the chase is boring and she's never going to appear again. This one-off character doesn't leave a mark in a way that is good and fine for being one-off. You have a character with a unique power that's a part of a unique group, and you kill them off instantly. That makes you just wish I could have more. I wish I could have more of Miss Mimicker, but we won't. We will never have more of this character, and that's sad. Anyway, we have Brashista, who's going in the bottom of B. So far, she's interesting enough. It is hard to say because she has only had one scene, which is mostly build-up, but she has had great build-up. Not much lore before that, and we have not gotten any idea on what her characterization can be. So once again, this ranking, for the most part, is actually a very blind shot, because we have little to no information. So with that, that is my ranking of all the Garten of Banban characters. How do you feel? How do you like my ranking? Have some of my opinions left you stunned? Do not come to my door. I have barricaded it. Do not come after me for having these opinions. They're my opinions, and I think they're at least good for the character and writing position. Tell me what you think below without banging through my door. See you all guys next time. Have a great day. Like and subscribe. Keep on banbanning.